All right. So I wanted to welcome everybody and thank you for taking time out of your afternoon to join us for this CBB Integrated Pest Management 101 webinar. I'm Andrea Kawabata. I am with the University of Hawaii Cooperative Extension Service, and I'm actually in Kona and working with the coffee farmers statewide as well as orchard crop growers in the west side of the Big Island. We also have Melanie Bandera. She is first and foremost a coffee farmer, but she is also working with the Hawaii Department of Agriculture for the Beauveria Bassiana subsidy program. So, well, CBB 101. So if some of you have gone through this class before, it might be a little bit redundant, but hopefully you'll pick up something different, maybe that skipped through from the first time that you've joined us. But let's see. Okay, let's get going. So what I'll do is I'll go through the basics of CBB, its biology, its hosts, and other things like that, so you get a better understanding of this beetle. I'll also talk about its management and the recommendations that we have for the best practices. I won't go into detail about coffee leaf rust, though it is, a really bad disease that showed up last October in Hawaii. But I'll also provide you with some resources on where you can get information on CLR. There's going to be a lot of information on CBB, so I don't want to inundate you too much with additional CLR information too. So if you have any questions about either, please reach out to Melanie and I, and we're happy to answer additional questions in the future that you might have. And then Melanie will go through the subsidy program provided by the Department of Agriculture, and that helps to provide a cost savings to the grower for the products that are used to control CBB. And then following her presentation, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So CBB, it's a very tiny beetle. As you can see in that picture, it's only about 1.5 millimeters long. This beetle is endemic to Africa, and it is considered one of the worst coffee pests in the world. It's found in pretty much every growing region throughout the world, and in Hawaii, every island that grows coffee except Molokai does have coffee berry borer, and most recently it was found on Kauai last year. Coffee is the main host of CBB, so we do not see it reproducing in any other trees. So CBB infects very young coffee, mature green coffee, as well as ripe coffee. So it can go through the very many stages of coffee development, and basically it goes through the flower end of the coffee berry, and as it continues to drill down, it'll start to affect the bean. And if you open up that bean, a lot of times early in infestation, you will find that one of the beans is damaged. If you look at the top right-hand corner photo, the CBB has started to create a gallery in the bean, and you can actually see 3 little eggs there. And she also will pull in a fungus that will turn the bean kind of a bluish green color. And the larvae start to consume the bean, and they will cause a lot of damage to that bean. And a lot of times it's not salvageable. So as the berry ripens and the beetles start to mature, they can consume nearly the entire bean, and sometimes you're left with just dust as the berry turns into a raisin. So they can cause a lot of damage, and they definitely do also affect the quality of coffee coming out of the farm. So the life cycle of CBB is from egg to adult. It takes about a month. If the temperatures are a little warmer, it can speed up a little bit more. If the temperatures are a little cooler, their development can slow down a little bit. On average, a female can lay anywhere between 30 and about 70 eggs, sometimes up to 120 eggs. So they're very prolific. And they're quite interesting. So a female that bores into the bean will lay the eggs, and usually she can produce about a 10-to-1 ratio of new females to males. And within the bean, the brothers and sisters will mate with each other. And then the female beetles will leave the berry to look for new berries to infest. And then the cycle will start all over within the bean of the berry. The males do not leave. They cannot fly like the female can, and typically they will just die within the bean that they were born in. So in the field, we tend to see that CBB accumulates in these places called that we consider hotspots. And some of these areas throughout the farm may be where they're highly shaded. Sometimes you'll find these little hotspots on particular branches and where initial females have actually gone into the berries. Sometimes the waste produced by these females, as well as the ripening berries and their alcoholic substances, that helps to attract additional females to a particular area. So we tend to see these sites of aggregation, and so they're not dispersed evenly throughout the field. For movement, CBB doesn't tend to travel very far. However, they can travel long distances being aided by wind, as well as with human movement of infested cherry, raisins, unroasted coffee, trees, soil on your clothing, shoes. Sometimes berries will drop into a cuff of pants and be moved around that way. And also, when we first started to notice CBB in Hawaii, uh, the early infestations that happened through farms were along the roadsides. And what that entailed was, as farmers were moving their cherry from their farm to the processor, CBB was able to come straight out of the burlap bags, and then the wind would pick them up and just carry them to the next farm over. So even just transporting coffee, with vehicles was another way that CBB was able to move long distances. They really don't fly well. Most CBB will stay within a range of about 50 feet from their origination, although research has found that they can go over 200 feet just by flying alone. We see a lot more CBB activity with high humidity as well as rain events that follow a period of dry. And also, what was really interesting when I first started was, going to a farmer's place, and he had a storage room that had a dehumidifier in there and AC system, so it kept it cool and dry, and that's where he stored his parchment. And he brought us into the room and he's like, take a look at all this stuff on the cement floor. What is it? And so we scooped some of it up, took it outside to look at, and they were CBB that had actually crawled out of the parchment. His coffee was sun dried, and when they landed on that cement floor, it was quite cool. So the CBB looked like they died, but as we kept them out in the warm temperature outside in his lanai, they actually started to wake up and fly away. So sun drying does not kill CBB. The drying process prevents them from continuing to eat the bean, but it doesn't necessarily kill the adult CBB, while mechanically drying can. So that was just one of the interesting things that I wanted to share with you. So part of being in the state and growing coffee, we have a responsibility to prevent the spread of CBB. Molokai still doesn't have it. Some farms actually, even on the Big Island, I know of one in particular that still does not have CBB also, and because they're quite separated from any other farms. So we do have quarantine regulations in place. And even though, we are within the state, we still have inter-island quarantines that affect the movement of unroasted coffee plants, soil going inter-island, and, not just coffee, but there are other plants as well. So if you ever want to transport any kind of coffee materials, use coffee equipment, unroasted coffee, you do need to have a permit and an inspection, and sometimes you do need to have a treatment to transport coffee from one island to the next. So just to be aware of that. And although we have CBB as well as rust in Hawaii, we also need to be aware that there are about 50 different races of rust. So we've got one here. There could be 49 other ones that could easily be moved from other countries to Hawaii, as well as other diseases like coffee berry disease, coffee stem borer. Those are also pests that we still do not have in Hawaii. So we need to take the precautions and prevent them from coming here. There are USDA rules as well as Hawaii Department of Agriculture plant quarantine rules and regulations that we should follow. So anytime, if you're going to go to another country and you're going to be visiting another farm, a coffee farm, consider taking extra clothes that you can then wear back onto the plane that's going to be clean, never been worn in a farm, and especially footwear. We've gone to Brazil in the past and actually left our shoes there in the country. So we didn't want to bring any of that back. And then also, considering washing and heat drying the clothing that you've worn in that country prior to coming back to the state. And so those are just some of the methods that you can help in preventing other diseases and pests from arriving into Hawaii. And also not smuggling any coffee also. That's a big one. So, going through the management protocols for CBB, the current recommendations are found online at that website there, hawaiicoffeeed.com. The information that we're providing today is based off of research, either from other countries or from Hawaii-based research. And because this research is continuously ongoing, we try to keep up with that and to update the recommendations coming out to growers. So these documents have been continuously evolving. We keep them very general also because every farm is a little bit different. So if there's something in there that doesn't make sense for your farm, I'm happy to talk with you and figure out, a method that will be useful on your farm and the way that you farm your coffee. So if you head to the website and you hover over the tab that says CBB management, it'll pull down a list of all the different portions of the recommendations. And so you can go through all the different parts of it, like field sanitation, pruning, feral and unmanaged coffee trees, field monitoring, CBB control, harvesting, shipping. There's also information on the subsidy program, as well as other presentations and publications. At this website, also, we have information for coffee leaf rust, agricultural events and announcements that we post, as well as other information for coffee diseases and pests. So lots of information there. Please, when you get the chance, take a look at this website. Okay, so some of the major steps include field sanitation, field monitoring, CBB control, and harvesting. So I'll go through these different sections in a little more detail. So the first is going to be field sanitation, and by far, field sanitation is the most important control measure for CBB. And basically that entails strip picking green, ripe, overripe, and raisin coffee at the end of the harvest season. And the purpose of that is to remove the colonizers that would continue to be in the field, and then also to remove the CBB breeding sites that would continue to be in the field if you did not strip pick them off and destroy or process this coffee. So basically, as a new season starts, you're starting with the lowest infestation that you possibly could start off with. So if you kind of remember from the first couple of slides, one female can lay anywhere between 30 and 120 eggs. So, if we were to take that lower end and say one female CBB laid 33 eggs, at that 10-to-1 ratio, you'd have 30 new females and 3 males. So, just even having a single female in that field can already start an infestation in your new season. So Considering 1 month later, that female has 30 new babies. 2 months later, 900 new CBB. 5 months later, you've got over 24 million new CBB. So it's really important to do the strip pick at the end of the season and clean up the farm to remove CBB lingering from that last season. So at one of the farms, the farmer, he contacted me and he was wondering, I've got these branches I'm serving, and I see that some branches just have a ton of CBB on the berries. What's going on? And so we walked the field, and if you can see them in this picture, there's some ripe cherry, but also there's raisin in this branch. And what we, realized by walking through and taking a look at the berries was that on the branches that had these raisins and ripening cherry that were kind of, ahead of the remainder of the crop, these branches, if they were infested, they tended to be even more infested. So basically, CBB was bred in that raisin and in some of those ripening cherry. The next generation would just then come out of that raisin, walk over to the nearby green berry, and then start to infest that. So removing all the raisins and out of season ripening berries is really important, especially in the beginning of the season. And that helps to protect the new crop from CBB. So if you've got seasonal harvest and you know that you've got a window of opportunity to reduce the amount of CBB in the field, again, strip pick all green, ripe, overripe, and raisin coffee at the end of the harvest. And you also want to do that prior to pruning, and that way you're not dragging the branches through the field and dropping berries through the field. And if you do have some ripe coffee in there, you might want to process and then destroy the remainder of the unprocessable coffee. Some folks in the higher elevation have year-round harvesting or don't at least have a very specific window for harvest. And so the recommendation for that is to not remove the green berries, but yet to remove the ripe, overripe, and raisin berries off of the trees. And then to continue to harvest until you are done harvesting for that season. You may also need to continue to monitor and spray throughout the harvest to continue to protect the young berries that are developing on the branches. And, again, if any infested coffee is left on the trees or on the ground, CBB can remain alive in those and then go from one season to the next. So strip pick the ripe, overripe, and raisin coffee, even if you have year-round harvesting. So there's various ways of killing CBB in these infested berries and raisins, and you can collect them, seal them up, keep them sealed up for at least 2 weeks. You can leave them in direct sun, and that way the heat will help to degrade the coffee berries and to also kill them. You can bury them under at least 6 inches of compact soil or compost. If you've got a small amount of quantity of coffee berries, you can at least freeze them for 48 hours and then return the berries back to the farm as composted materials as well. And you can also heat the parchment to kill CBB at 122 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 25 minutes, and that will help to kill the adults. Keeping the farm pruned and fertilized is also important for maintaining and improving the health of the coffee trees and to increase or maintain production. But pruning also helps to open up the canopy, and that allows light as well as helps you to spray and get better spray penetration into the center of the canopy, as well as to sieve cherries throughout the tree so that you don't miss any during the harvest. And again, as a reminder, make sure you're strip picking prior to pruning your trees. So The only method of pruning that helps to control CBB is by stumping in large blocks or large areas. And this photo kind of shows how large of an area this farm used to stump with. So you'll see an area in front that still is productive, but yet that area below has been stumped completely to remove all the foliage as well as all of the berries. And if you look closely, you might be able to see also some of the traps that they've set up in the field just to collect some of the residual berries, coffee berry borers that may still be in that field. So stumping will help to reduce CBB infestation and damages, particularly in the first year of production as that field comes back and starts to yield berries. And because there are no coffee berries in the year after stumping, it also helps to cut the costs of spraying, as well as labor also can be easier in stumping versus the Kona style or with Beaumont Fukunaga style of pruning. So stumping, it doesn't help to control CBB in the second and third years of production, but it definitely can help in that first year of production by the removal of all the berries in that part of the field. Traps are basically useful as a monitoring tool for CBB. It is not meant to catch in mass quantities CBB in a field, so we do not recommend leaving traps up in a farm throughout the season. When it's best used is during the harvest and immediately after the harvest, or during the tail end of the harvest anyway, and during the strip picking time. So at the end of the harvest and when you don't have any berries, CBB has no better place to go than to be attracted to the methanol and ethanol of the traps. And if they can find the traps, they hit it and then end up falling into that soapy water, and they're not able to climb out, and they will die in the soapy solution. So that can help to collect CBB that's remaining in the field after the strip pick and prior to your new berries being formed. So once you start seeing some flowering as well as new berry development, I would recommend removing the traps from the field, cleaning them up, and then storing them away for the next season. They can also be used again in stumped blocks to help to collect CBB that's lingering in those stumped fields. We use a method called the 30 tree sampling method for CBB field monitoring. And this monitoring method can help you determine when to begin spraying. It can also help you determine the position of CBB in the green berries, as well as how effective your sprays have been. It can also help you understand the percent infestation throughout your field, as well as the bean damage of the green berries. And the protocols for doing this sampling method is found in the recommendations document. And the document will also help you with an example of how to use the numbers of percent infestation as well as percent AB alive to determine whether you spray or not spray at that time. And so by monitoring CBB, the goal really is to begin your season with the lowest infestation possible, and then using these IPM protocols to maintain that low level. And then that way you can end your season with the lowest damage rates possible in your harvested cherry. So knowing, this A, B, as well as CD positioning is really important. In this AB position, CBB is very vulnerable to the sprays and can be contacted with good coverage. And CBB can die with the Beauveria sprays in this AB position. However, when they are in the CD position, they're quite well protected within the bean. Some of the CBB will have already damaged the bean, and some may have already started to lay eggs as well as have new babies in there. So, catching CBB early in this AB position is really important to being able to control and manage these beetles. And some of the researchers, they have done the surveying, and even with their surveying, they do see how sporadic the infestations are throughout a farm. So CBB infestations are not ubiquitous throughout the trees, and you can actually see these kind of whitish and red areas that show up as hotspots. So some of these hotspots can be in areas where there's overstory trees, where there was an early infestation of CBB. So that area continues to become infested if the berries are not removed. And so, keep an eye out on those areas. And it's a good idea to, walk through your farm and, know what's going on in the farm, so then you can manage it early on. So researchers have also looked at the flight activity of CBB in Kona as well as Ka'u. And what they've shown through trap catch is that there are a couple of times in the year when CBB flies more readily than others. And they found that to be in the spring as well as, early winter through the harvest. And so, what we've also seen through the sampling of the green berries is very similar. We see a peak in this AB alive, or when CBB is very active during the spring, as well as during the harvest season. But keep in mind, there is a point during the year that CBB goes from an AB position to CD position. So they are no longer vulnerable to the sprays when they're in the CD position. So, taking a look at that spring circle, that's going to be the part of the year that CBB is vulnerable to your sprays. You can kill CBB during the spring with the Beauveria sprays, and you can help to protect the beans from damage. Whereas if you wait until the harvest season to start spraying and managing CBB, it really is too late, because by then CBB is well protected within the bean, and the sprays are much less effective in killing CBB during the harvest. So, catching CBB early, doing the management and control early on, like now, we may need to already start monitoring and spraying now. Some folks have berries on the trees. And so that's going to be really important early on in the season to be able to manage CBB at a low level, and then to have fewer damage in your harvested cherry. So Beauveria bassiana is the main product, or the main biopesticide that's used to control CBB in Hawaii. The products are called Botanigard as well as Mycotrol. Mycotrol is a certified organic product that can be used on organic farms. And the rate of Beauveria to be used is 1 quart per acre mixed in at least 30 gallons of water. So a quart is about 32 ounces. It is optional to add in a surfactant and or a sticker product to help either get better coverage or to also help the product weather some light rain. And because Beauveria is a live product, it's important to not transport it through the heat of the day, and not to store it in hot places where the sun might kill Beauveria in the container. So if you're heading out to pick up a container of Beauveria from a farm and garden store, it's a good idea to either keep it in a cooler with a little pack of ice, or at least to keep it out of the heat, and to take it to a cool, dark area for storage as soon as possible. This product works best when CBB are in that AB position again, because you need to contact CBB in order to kill her. Spraying at least monthly is recommended, or if you're using the sampling to determine when to spray, you would be spraying when the sampling warrants that. Beauveria also persists in the field best in high humidity as well as when the sun UV is low. So we notice that CBB flies around a lot more during the afternoon hours. So that's a good time to be spraying. But we also know that it kind of rains during the afternoon. So it's kind of a trade-off, yeah. But if it's raining in the afternoon and the only time you can spray is in the morning, go ahead and spray in the morning, and don't wait for a perfect day when you can spray in the afternoon. And always, when using any kind of pesticide, Beauveria, any other product that might kill insects or fungi, always follow the label directions on the product. Make sure you're covering up with the proper protective equipment and following the rates as well as any other directions that are provided on that label. So Beauveria kind of shows up on the butt end of this insect, and it sometimes happens, and sometimes you won't see it, and it all depends on the conditions of the weather. So if it's been humid and rainy, you might see this kind of white cottony mass over the insect's butt end, and sometimes you won't, although the CBB will be dead if she was contacted with the Beauveria spray. And um, that's all dependent on the weather. So sometimes when it's really dry, we don't see this cottony white mass from the Beauveria. So early in the season, kind of like a time that we are in right now, some of the farms have berries that developed from an early flowering. I've noticed some farms have that. And so some of these berries will become highly infested by CBB because they're literally the only berries out there until the main crop comes in. And so the recommendation, depending on the amount of berries that you have on the field, is to actually pick and destroy these berries. And because they're highly infested typically by CBB, they're usually lower in quality as a ripe berry. And a lot of times we do see them become floaters. So if you do have these berries that have developed outside of your main season, the recommendation is to strip pick them off. If you leave them and they are infested, a lot of the CBB will continue to develop within these berries, and they will then move on into the new crop and infest the new crop. So by removing these berries, you reduce the infestation within the field, and you help to also protect your new and main crop. During the harvest season, it's recommended to harvest as often as possible. Every 2 weeks is a good time frame to be harvesting if possible. I know it's not always that easy to get pickers out there, but that helps to reduce the number of raisins in the trees. While you're harvesting, make sure you're picking all your ripe, overripe, and raisin cherries and then processing. A water float can help to remove raisins from your cherry if you need to do that. And then also to continue monitoring and spraying as needed through the harvest, especially for those who have year-round crop. We want to avoid dropping berries on the ground. They can become potential hosts of CBB, as well as a new population that will then infest coffee that's remaining for that harvest season. And we want to make sure to keep the coffee cool and process them as soon as possible. If we are trying to contain and kill CBB in the wet mill, we can close off the wet mill. We can also put traps in the wet mill, but that does take a lot of effort. And so, I really recommend concentrating on the field and keeping CBB at a low infestation and a low damage level in the field, and focusing our energies there instead of in the wet mill and dry mill. And CBB can easily fly out of any containers, bags, and so we want to try and avoid allowing them to head back into the field after the coffee has been picked. There has been some work on biocontrols. So we have a couple of different flat bark beetles that are found in Hawaii. Cathartus quadriculus as well as Leptophlorius are a couple of those different species. And what we've found is that they do go after CBB eggs, larvae, and pupa, but they mainly go after CBB in raisins that are left on the tree. So while they do help a little bit, they're not the perfect biocontrol for CBB. And we still do recommend removing any raisins that you see in the tree. Don't worry about these beetles. They do go into other types of berries and seeds. So, still continue to remove the berries and raisins off of the trees and to continue to strip pick. They will help a little bit, especially in the raisins that have been forgotten and missed in the trees. Um, we do have breeding stations that can help to repopulate a farm and to augment the populations within a farm with flat bark beetles. And there's also been some research into Phimastachus coffea. It is a wasp that is being looked at as a biocontrol to import into Hawaii. And so the research is still ongoing to make sure that this wasp will not affect any native beetles and to see if it will be a good biocontrol to import and release. So just to kind of bring everything back together, uh, the recommendations for CBB management entail field sanitation, which is the most important thing that you can focus on, especially now during the early part of the season with the strip picking. If you do have year-round harvest, if any chance that you can create a break in your harvest and then strip pick all of the remaining coffee off of the trees, that's going to be your best bet to starting off the new season with a very low infestation level. That strip pick is going to be really important. So if you haven't done so already, please go through the farm, strip pick prior to your pruning. Prune, desucker, as well as fertilize to keep the health of the trees and your production levels up. Monitor and, keep track of CBB and catch them early on in the season to be able to best manage them. Keep farm records for your monitoring as well as pesticide use. And then control CBB early on with Beauveria bassiana. And this way, monitoring, managing CBB early on in your season will help you to reduce those damages during the harvest. And as we come up on the harvest season, I'm sure that's going to come up faster than we would like it. Harvest often and pick off all your ripe, overripe, and raisin coffee during the harvest season. And that will help to keep that field sanitation going as well. Okay, so again, that AB position is really important so that we can kill CBB before she starts to damage the seed. We've got a bunch of different videos up on YouTube, and as you have time, I welcome you to take a look at them. They help to kind of give you a visual of what we mean by the strip pick. They help to give you better instructions about the 30 tree sampling method and about harvesting, as well as calculating bean damage in harvested cherry. So again, the website with a lot of information is going to be hawaiicoffeeed.com. HDOA also has information about their subsidy program there. And I will have this PowerPoint available online for you to go back as well as share the information with others. And if you have questions about coffee leaf rust, you're welcome to contact me after this presentation and visit some of the information that's there online. So with the PowerPoint in PDF, these are all going to be clickable links. So, you can head to the website and check out that information. And my contact information is there. Feel free, please, if you have any questions, to get in touch with me. And I wanted to thank our funding agencies with the University of Hawaii, USDA, as well as the collaborations that we have with Department of Agriculture. And it takes a whole team to, put together an IPM document of this sort. So, thank you to all the folks that have helped throughout the years, as well as the researchers, technicians, and specialists that have provided the information for these recommendations. So, with that, I will end, and Melanie's going to be on. So let me pull up Melanie's presentation real quick. And if Melanie wanted to say a few words, let's go for it.
So as we said before, I run the Department of Agriculture's coffee berry borer pesticide subsidy program. It's an annual reimbursement for coffee farmers using either of the Beauveria Bassiana products that Andrea mentioned, either Botanigard or Biocontrol. It was started originally, the Department of Ag wanted to help with coffee berry borer beetle damage, and this was the best way they could do it, was by providing this program. So it started in 2016. It's an act of the legislature, and it's in the legislature again to be extended. So if you want to, through one of your organizations, go ahead and testify for that. That could be beneficial if we want to keep it going for a while. And I'm going to say this at the beginning and say it at the end. We're all scared about coffee leaf rust. We're all struggling with coffee leaf rust right now. But if you have receipts for Botanigard or Biocontrol from last year, I can reimburse you right now, and you can use that funding to buy some of the products you need for coffee leaf rust. So even though it's a CBB subsidy, it's there for your farm right now, and it may take us a while to get other kinds of programs, through the legislature. So again, I wear two hats. I'm a farmer and I run this program, and I'll try and clarify which of those when I say different things. Let's see. Let me just see if there's anything I missed on my first slide. Hang on, checking my notes. Another reason why it's important to keep this going is in 2020, they sunsetted the decreased quality we had going. So there's increased quality standards for Hawaii coffees since last year. So CBB impacts your quality, and this subsidy can help you maintain more CBB free coffee. So some of us may have missed that with all the pandemic and everything that happened in 2020. It happened in January last year. Oh, Andrea, let's go on to the next slide. So very simply, it's 50% back on your original receipts for Botanigard or Biocontrol, and there's caps at $600 per acre per year and $6,000 per farm business. It's a pre-tax subsidy, and it does not cover surfactant. So all you have to do is save your receipts. I have original all over my slides, but because of the pandemic, we're trying to run the program remotely. Most farmers are over 65. So I am actually looking for your copies or your emails or whatever you've got of your receipts at this point. I'm tracking it in different ways. So right now, if you have receipts from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, that's what I'm working on reimbursing. I will stop doing that at the end of June and start for the receipts you've got from July 1st, 2020 until the ones that you're purchasing right now till it ends June 30th of this year. And the timing's a little confusing. This was set up on the state's fiscal year. Most farms are on an annual year. You'll have to pull your receipts from 2 years when you come in to to get your annual reimbursement. And by come in, I mean email or snail mail them to me, since we're not really doing office visits during COVID. So when you originally set up your file, I need to be able to prove that you have a coffee farm and you are who you are, that you are actually spraying Beauveria bassiana on a farm. And the way we do that is this paper trail. I need your receipts, your driver's license, your G tax number to show that you are a farm business, and your federal tax ID, that might be your social security number for half the farmers, and your TMK or the lease if you're not the landowner. And again, I'll say with COVID-19, we are definitely doing this through email, scanning, or snail mail. I have even had drop-offs and pickups. I will work with each farmer, whatever technology they've got or they're willing to use to make it work. So where do you start? You can do the online application. If you search CBB Subsidy Program, you're going to come up with my Department of Ag page, and there's a link to our SurveyMonkey online application, and you can start there. Or you can just email me at hdoa.cbb@hawaii.gov, and I will send you a PDF of our application, which you can print and fill out and email back. Or you can call and I will snail mail you a paper application if that fits better for your farm business. Very important, we also have a grower survey about your CBB practices on your farm, and some economic questions too about how you're incorporating these new challenges. And it's not technically required in order to get the subsidy, but it is hugely helpful to extension, to Andrea and her team, to research, both at CTAHR and PBARC. And so if you can take that 15 minutes annually and fill out that survey, it gives us all a ton of data for improving the research going on in Hawaii in coffee and the extension. And that's it. Any questions?
Well, thank you so much, everybody. I, appreciate the time you've taken to join us. Thank you, Melanie, for your presentation as well. It's been super helpful to have that subsidy program available. And, if anybody has questions for either of us, please don't hesitate to contact us. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrea.